Okay, welcome everybody. Very good. Welcome to the 44th CALLERLAB Convention in Mesa, Arizona. Today is April the 11th, and this is the Shoring Up Your Foundation session. I, Bill Harrison, will serve as your moderator for this session. Our panelists is Don Wood and Gary Felton. I'll give you a little history. Gary received his first paycheck for calling a square dance in August of '72. His day job has taken him to Maryland, Texas, Kentucky, where he is also called locally in each of those locations. He's taught beginner classes and was a member of the local Callers Association in all of these process states that his job took him to. He's been a local regional caller, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, D.C., and New Jersey, since he returned back to this area, the Washington, D.C. area, in 1996. He calls mainstream all the way through plus and advanced program in the region. He has a caller run advanced club, and he shares the plus club. He does most of the area and regional clubs as guest caller. Joined CALLERLAB in 1977. Has served on the advanced committee, definitions committee, and ways and means. Matter of fact, I think he was chairman of one of those at one time, ways and means. His day job is a professor and extension agriculture engineer at the University of Maryland. Okay. Our second presenter is Mr. Don Wood from Olympia, Washington. Don's been calling for 37 years. He and his partner, Robert Townsend, are also the co-owners and producer of Lou Mac Records. Don teaches and calls 4 clubs in the Washington state. Don joined by his colleagues Glenn, how do you pronounce that name? Reixach, thank you. And thank you, sorry about that, and Jim Hatrick. They teach for one of the most successful lesson programs in the country. The Olympia Area Square Dance Association sponsors a 10-week multi-entry lesson program featuring Basic 51 and the mainstream. It is quite normal to have 8 to 12 squares dancing at Monday and Thursday's lessons. Don teaches the Condensed Basic 51 through the mainstream program on Mondays at Lac-A-Do Square Dance Hall in Olympia. On Thursday, he teaches the Substantial Club 50 program for the Swing Nuts. Okay, just want to make sure it wasn't a typo. Square Dance Club in Sumner, Washington. Thank you. His ultimate goal is to create a learning environment, which is his first and foremost fun as well as educational. His mantra is every lesson, dance is a party, let's have fun. Okay, let's give a nice hand to your presenters. Thank you. I am Bill Harrison, and I'm here. So, this morning we're going to start off. Now, I've done quite a few of these sessions over my career of being a CALLERLAB member and being on the Board of Governors. I don't think I've ever seen as many handouts that you guys are going to get today. I do not want to hand them out now because we have like 9. And they're full of information. And you're more than welcome. We have the Condensed Teach Method booklet we have here. Okay. We have what Gary's going to start off with. We have teaching techniques here as well. We have Don's processes on what they're doing in Olympia. That's 2 pages, 2 pages, 1 pages, and 1 more pages. I mean, it's just really, you got a lot of information here. The idea of this particular session is to, let's see if I can find it for you. Did you guys read your booklet to find out what this is all about? Okay, and it's shore up your foundation, and it's modern square dancing is complicated. To sell it to a wide market, we must make it easy to learn. The better job we do of teaching, the more our new recruits and those already experienced will enjoy their learning experience. With better retention of dancers, this panel will share with you special techniques that they have learned to make the learning process easier while reinforcing the foundation. We also wanted to touch on how we use some of the calls that are being taught. And since it's a condensed process and you don't have like a whole year to go through it and spend a lot of time on it, we have some ideas for you that can make maybe life a little easier for you when you decide you want to teach some things. Okay? I'm going to start off with Gary and let him go first.
I'm going to start with one housekeeping operation. Checked with the home office. Handouts this year will be on USBs if you want them for $5. They will also be on the website. So the handouts are available 2 different ways. Pick a winner. So I want to start with the philosophy. Yeah. When you teach, you need to kind of develop your own philosophy. Years and years ago, we used to talk about bring them in, those that survive will be graduates. And if they got it, they got it. And if they didn't, we've got more people coming next year. Well, obviously, that's not the way we are anymore. And so the opposite end of that is I'm going to teach and work them through every single thing until they've got it all down. Most of us probably fall somewhere in the middle there, but you need to figure out where you fall in that, because you're going to have to make decisions about every call you teach, about every night you do, and you can fall back on that philosophy to help you make. The other thing you got is constraints every time you teach. You might have, I only get 90 minutes to teach in this club, or I might have to be done by March in order to graduate them. These are constraints that you have. There's lots of constraints. Those are just examples. So you have to take this philosophy and these constraints and figure out, what am I going to do about split reverse swap around? And how am I going to teach that? Well, we're going to do mainstream and basic instead. So you're going to have to figure out what the words well enough mean to you. And you're going to have to use that every time you make a decision. It's nice to have that ahead of time. Even talk over with your club about it so that you both are on the same page, so that later down the road they don't come to you and say, well, we thought you would have been teaching it this way, so that you don't get harsh feedback on it. That's about really all I want to talk about with philosophy, except that make sure you discuss that with your club leaders and maybe somebody that's close to you, a caller that you trust, so that you can get feedback from somebody on it. That's how to start before you start your class. That's all I really want to say about the philosophy one. Bill, do you have something else, or you want me to go right into keep on moving? Okay. I'm going to talk about the condensed teach method. Now, there's a couple of different things about condensed teach method, and Bill's going to talk about some of it. I'm going to talk about condensed teach as a component of 0 to plus, because our region from Philadelphia to Richmond is pretty much a plus destination area. And though we have gotten our club to do a lot of things, one of the things they have been adamant about is we're not going to be mainstream. We are going to be plus. So that's where we are right now. When you take the CTM method, condensed teach method, it says it's a 12-session method. It may take you 15. We happened to have a very social group the last time we did it, and they were elsewhere a lot of the time. So 15 weeks was even a good guess. And that allows you some flexibility when you know how social they are. But the CTM gives us a method to get the dancers really rapidly dancing the nuts and the bolts, the meat of mainstream. Circulate, trade, run. They're doing that really quick, and they're learning the foundations. Another thing it gives you in 0 to plus is a different way to think. What do you do when you teach? You teach the mainstream program, then you teach the plus program. I don't. I teach the CTM, and then I mix plus and mainstream together so that I'm teaching do pas so and relay the Ducey on the same night. I have less pairs of difficult calls to teach this way. I'm only teaching one tough call a night. Makes it much easier to have successes when there's only one really hard thing. Oh, and I'm being successful at other stuff. That's good feeling for the dancers. So it made me rethink teaching orders completely by using the CTM method. I think he's trying to get me to drown. When we teach mainstream and plus with CTM, we really get the club dancers who don't know mainstream from plus, from CTM, from anything, to feeling good about dancing because they're dancing the meat of their program so quickly. That's kind of the way we folded it into a 0 to plus class. I'm going to quit right there, Bill.
Okay, so everybody understands the process that he's taken going from basic all the way through. So after we get through the condensed process, the calls that are left are very, very easy movements to learn. do, pas, so, thars, star through, die through, those kinds of calls. Each one of those probably takes about a minute and 30 seconds to teach. Okay? If you're not familiar with the condensed teach process, it was intended and designed with the 12-week calls that are there to go in a perfect world into a mainstream club so that you could have 2 classes within a year, maybe even more, but your destination was get them into the club. In the club atmosphere, then you could take those remaining calls and teach them during the club dance process without really altering anything and taking away from those who were experienced mainstream dancers. If you're going to teach 2 calls on the 3rd tip or 4th tip, whatever your pick happened to be, by doing that, it takes about 3 minutes of their time for new people to still dance and have a great time and learn how to do star through and die through. No big deal. That was the intent. The process of teaching is the key, and that's where all those calls, they were actually thought through. It took a long time to put them together. What do we hear most at a mainstream dance? Just, you guys can tell me what you hear most at a plus dance like that. Okay? And you go, well, gosh, I only hear like 10 or 12 calls. What about the other 20-some? Well, this is how that was put together. Okay? How many hear wheel and deal from lines anymore, two-faced lines? Do you hear it more or than you hear Ferris wheel? I think the answer would be no. So those were the type of things that were consideration of that. Now, in my situation again, I've created a mainstream group at home. It's slow growing, but I'm using the condensed teach, and the process is all explained here. We do 12 weeks. After the 12 weeks is finished, we have 4 weeks of just dancing, those calls that we were taught, those people learned. Then we start another class, and these people that took the first 12 come and they get their friends to come to the next set of lessons. We alter our time. Keeping it on the same day is a great advantage. There's no transition. They know the place, they know the location, they know who the people are, and the time just changes. So we change the time, and we give those 12-week people that went through the first about an hour of just dance time after the new lessons start. They participate again, going through another set of 12 weeks, plus they get that hour for themselves. Then we have a 4-week break again, and they just dance. So now we have 2 classes just dancing together for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, however the calendar works out. That's when I go over things. What I do, and that's what we get into a little bit later on, for example, I start making the combinations of the calls they're going to learn to finish the basic mainstream program. So I'll start using the combination of how to do Dixie style. So by doing that, I'll break it down and just call calls, not giving that particular name. Okay. Then the next 12 weeks, we go and take the 2 classes, and they get all the way through mainstream. It really takes about 6 to 7 weeks. It does not take 12 weeks to get them through. But with the calendar, when you're trying to place this yearly, it fits in to do it this way. 12, 4, 12, 5, something like that, 12 again. When those guys are finished, they're mainstream. We start a new class again. So it kind of goes around to like in September, May, I'm going to start a new one. We'll have 4 weeks in August. September, 12 weeks will be mainstream, finishing it up, basic mainstream, 17 calls or whatever's left. January, brand new class again, and do the same process and change the time. So we're going to enter into a phase where how we're going to, juggle all these different programs in the same evening, but we're working it out. So like, for example, the May group, we're going to start a half hour early. So at 7 to 7:30, we dance the 12-week program for those who just went through it. Then we do the new class. Then we have 45 minutes to an hour for the mainstreamers, and we'll continue that for 12 weeks. And then, of course, we have a 4-week break. They all dance together, and we enter into the mainstream, which means the mainstream people go over that again, and it's a really situation that we're trying to really make successful. That is sticking to using the condensed teach method as a destination to mainstream and mainstream only. The one that Gary was talking about is once we get past the condensed process, those 17 calls that are left are coupled up with, okay, tonight, let's say, for example, we're going to learn AC-Doocy. We might learn 2 of those basic mainstream calls that were not taught in the 12-week process. So that's what they get. So what happens is we force the group to not have a destination of graduation. I want them to start in September. I want them to finish by March or April or whatever. It's whenever we finish. If it takes a year and a half, it takes a year and a half. That sounds really long. But remember now, we're dancing them, we're entertaining them, we're keeping them. Anybody who has gone through this process in this group, I happen to be the other caller, by the way, we have kept those dancers throughout the whole process. They're in, they're hooked, they get badges, the whole 9 yards, and they're in for the whole gamut. The only problem is it takes time, and that's because we can't get the club not to go to plus. So we found a different way to handle it, okay?
The other advantage is the club and the class dance at the same place at the same night.
Yes.
They're very social. They're very welcoming. Same place.
Same. The club people are in yes, they participate.
The club gets an hour afterwards of full plus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's how we do it. Okay, now, if I have questions, is it possible to make sure you say your name and where you're from, and we'll get a microphone to you.
Glenn Reixach from Olympia, Washington. Not being familiar with the condensed dance program, how many movements are you teaching in that 12-week period?
I think it's about 48 to 49.
And are they strictly within the confines of the mainstream program?
They're a mix. So, for example, we do recycles, we do scoop backs, we do what else? Circulate trades, all those. Okay, we have swing throughs. We have. I'm trying to think of what else we have.
Spin the top.
We have spin the top. Thank you. We have wheel and deal from lines looking out, but still you can still do it from two-faced, even though it's not the process. But what the heck? If you want to do it, fine, do it. But Ferris wheel definitely, because you're going to hear that more often. No, we do pass to the center. We don't do dive through. We do slide through.
So
do not do star through.
To answer my question, within that 12 weeks, you're only teaching within the confines of the CALLERLAB mainstream list.
Oh yes, absolutely.
No additional moves from plus or anywhere else.
No, strictly that.
That wasn't clear. I wanted to make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. And also, we do 2 arrangements of every call. Now, I'm a believer that we talk about the arrangements. There's a lot of calls in the basic mainstream that are, to me, I call intuitive. I don't have to stop and teach touch a quarter for every arrangement I come across. If I teach touch a quarter well, it doesn't matter what the arrangement of dancers are. They're going to execute it. Okay? Spin the top, for example. I work it. Gary does the same thing. We do it with boys on the end, girls in the middle. All the time. Those guys can do it. Recycle, same way. We're not looking for an easy way, but we're looking for the best way to make them successful at doing these calls. So in that 12-week, and possibly it could be 15, depending on how your people are attending, and that's why we got that 4-week span, in case we have to go over. The point is that by hitting at least a couple of places with all the calls that we can, it gives that environment of variety, and we don't have to really come back to it later on. It's tackled right then and there. Okay? Yes, Don Casper. You want me to do that?
You got better knees than me?
Don Casper from Mannheim, Germany. I would just have the question. I'm sure there are also weekend dances or festivals in your area. What do you tell your dancers? If they are able to attend or not, or if they do you go with them? Tell them they may not be able to dance everything, but they should try it, or that would be my question.
Very good question, and it's a tough one to convince everybody, wow, this is a great idea. I understand. I look at it as we need to change. I talk to the people. I let them know that this is the field that we're playing in, and you're not going to be able to go around and dance other places. Now, there are some dances that are like benefit dances, for example. If I happen to be involved with it, I tell them to come. Because when I'm calling, I'll make sure they dance. Okay? That's just the only thing I can really do. Now, our area festivals, one's in March and one's in July. The July one, they're going to be, depending on where we're at and what group actually gets to that point, they'll be able to go to that and dance mainstream. And both of them offer mainstream. Okay? Matter of fact, our first group that we had went to the March Festival and danced the whole weekend in the mainstream hall and had a wonderful time. But we dance every week. We let them know that our process with you is to build square dancing. Okay, we're here in order to have this activity in this location, and you are the people, and so they're buying into it. The hardest part is the experienced dancers, because it's not personally my group, it's a teaching council. And so they have like 12 people on this board, and they're experienced dancers. For them to buy in was very, very difficult. And still some are not quite there, but a lot have turned the corner because they see how they're dancing and the fun that they're having. Okay? And they've also gone to the festival and seen how they participate, and they're having a good time there too. We had a benefit that I was in December that I was able to participate in, and it was a multicolor thing. It was for Toys for Tots. That's what it was. And so we get there, and they were going to alternate tips, you know, like a mainstream tip and then have a plus tip and all that. Well, the students that I had taught, they attended. And there were supposed to be other people that were in the mainstream arena attending as well. And they finally said, well, gosh, we're sitting here a long time, because they had a mainstream tip, 2 rounds, okay, then a plus tip, then 2 rounds. And so the guy in charge said, we're just dancing mainstream the rest of the time. So they were like, boom, happy. And everybody else was happy too. It was amazing, because I thought, wow, how's this going to go? You do have those humps. Great question. Okay.
Stephen Nosek, Puyallup, Washington. Bill, what region do you call in?
Maryland.
And what region do you call in? So he's got Gary mentioned that most of his clubs are 0 to plus, but you've got a different area of Maryland that has subscribed to your side of the...
Well, it's actually on the Virginia side, but they're very, very close together.
Okay.
They're not far apart. Bridges, that's all.
Well,
yes.
So do you dance on a weeknight, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday?
Wednesday.
So every Wednesday, and your dance is on Wednesday as well?
Yes, the group dances on
Okay,
Wednesday.
so you mentioned that after you got done, you taught some of the fill-in calls. How do dancers react to going to a dance and being taught? Now, we have many dancers who come to a dance and they want to dance. They don't want a workshop. They don't want to be taught at a dance.
Well, if it's in a perfect world, okay, I'm being honest with you now. Okay?
No.
In a perfect world, if I had a mainstream club and our area was mainstream, and I did this same process to have multiple classes within a year, I would tell them this is the way it's going to be.
No,
I'm serious. I mean,
yeah, no.
And then I would say, hey, trust me, it's not going to be a bad thing to take one tip out of a night and learn a couple of calls. And if they have trust in you and they say, okay, we're in for it, then you have to sell it to them. You really do. And if you get them to understand that, then that's how I would do it. Okay? In order to have more classes.
And do the other callers in your region, other than you two, subscribe to your method, his method as well? Do they also use the same program? Are they freelancing and then you're fighting the rest of them? Because, as was mentioned, some people are more traditional, and they're going to teach the basic first and the mainstream. So you're going to have not as much mixture, which coincides with the question before, how do you mix them together at a festival when some are in? So do you get support from the other callers, or are you kind of on an island?
I think we're like on an island in a way.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a few, maybe 1 or 2, that use the Condensed as the teaching process. But like you said, if they have a three-quarter dance or a half dance somewhere, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And Gary, just one part for you. You say you go from 0 to plus. And so you mentioned do, paso, and relay the deuce at the same time. And do you go all the way through plus? You have 98 calls you're responsible for. And you do that in how long?
You need a microphone, Gary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I go from 0 to plus. It takes as long as it takes because our club is an hour to an hour and a half drive to the nearest club. We don't have a great deal of mixing. We have some people that drive that every night to come down and dance with us. But because we're isolated, we don't have a lot of pressure from others.
Yeah.
Mike Oliveri, Colorado. You said you were kind of on an island doing your own thing. There's a couple other callers that are doing it, is what you said.
Well, no, they're using the Condensed Teach as a teaching tool.
As a teaching tool. Okay.
But they still go their route.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
So it's kind of a standard format with that condensed teaching method then, as far as the calls themselves.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
The booklet's 44 pages long. So.
Okay. Because we ran into a problem in Colorado where one caller is teaching 50, another caller on the other end is teaching 50, and they're not the same 50.
Yes.
So if those two groups meet in the middle,
Correct.
we're down to 30 calls that we can call.
Correct.
Okay, so you are doing a standardized. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
And the big thing I want to say here is that I believe we have to somehow get to a point where we stop people from rushing on forward. Okay. I don't think any of you guys encourage your plus dancers if you're calling plus on a regular basis. I do not believe that you're encouraging them to move on to the advanced program. I don't hear you guys saying that, but it seems to be something that's fine for mainstream people just to rush right into plus. So look at it in that aspect. Think about it that way. Okay? I'm not going to take any more time on us. I need to get to Don because he's got his little thing he's going to do, and I'd like for him to go ahead and do that. And then after, if we have time, I'd like to take some more questions and answers for you, okay, from anybody, okay? Okay, Mr. Don Wood.
Hi.
That's me. That's me.
So, first of all, I'd like to recognize my colleague Glenn Reixach and my colleague Steve Nosek and Steve Mazzell from the from the Washington area. How many of you, I want to ask a question, how many of you would love to have a class that has 70 or 80 new dancers in it? Raise your hand if you'd like to have that. We have it. We have it right now, today. So, I know what CALLERLAB said about you can't sell your wares. Well, I'm going to sell my wares. I teach fun. I teach fun, and I tell every dancer, we're going to have a party tonight. We teach the Basic 51 program. We teach it in 10 weeks. But it's a really unique program because the program works like this. In September, my colleague Glenn Reixach starts a class, Basic 51. 5 weeks later, on Monday night, I start a class, Basic 51. The people that take Glenn's class can now come to my class for free. No charge. We want dancers. I'm not too concerned about money. After Glenn graduates his 51 class, and they've been coming now to my class, and my people are now 5 weeks in, and Glenn starts a new 51 class. But here's the unique thing. The class starts at 6:30. I'm going to speak for me, Glenn. I start at 6 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock, for a half an hour, I simply walk through. I don't call every call that was taught the week before. So they get to walk through. They get a little bit of, and they come early to do that. And I'm getting 4 or 5 squares early just for that. 6:30 the class starts. That class, B51 class, goes to 8 o'clock on the second iteration of this. From 8 to 9, we start teaching mainstream. The unique properties of this particular process is that our dancers, the people that are coming through class, some of them are coming through 3 and 4 times. This is their dance night. They love it. And then they come out and they'll join clubs. We have convinced our association to be the sponsors for the lesson program. The clubs are really encouraged. We tell them that the lessons night are a no recruitment zone. You don't get to recruit on lesson night. You want to recruit after they get through their programs and after they're ready to go to a mainstream, or a lot of the clubs have now said, hey, we're having B51 time at our dances. They can come. You can recruit till the cows come home there, but just don't do it here. Now, for the people, it's imperative that they come in and have an enjoyable time. Most people today work 2 jobs. You got a two income family. They didn't come out to learn how to do T-bone split circulates. They came out to learn how to have fun. They're tired. They want to enjoy themselves. I want to tell you a story. 30 years ago, I was down in California, and I was doing a weekend down there, and then part of the weekend was we had a caller seminar. And a young man sitting in the audience said to me something that I carry deep in my heart right now, and that is, square dancing must be the most fun thing you can do today, or they'll do something else. He's sitting right there. It's got to be fun, guys. If you're teaching the program and you're not working on your skill set as a teacher and how to make it easier, you realize that people learn basically in 3 combinations. They read either the written word, the spoken word, or kinetic, like you got to see it. You have to be able to show them, demonstrate for them, and then the other side is, and I know that Gary mentioned and Bill mentioned the club, or we call Angels. We have a document called Angel Tips. And it's a document that's given to the Angels before we start class. And it's basically what's expected of them. So, there's one teacher in the hall, not 54 teachers. They got a problem? They don't understand something? Bring them to me. We'll go over it. We also encourage them not to over-exercise the fluff. They're already having enough trouble turning a quarter. They don't need to know how to do it in a reverse flow method. And I guess more importantly, we're starting to see what I like to refer to as the snowball going downhill effect. Glenn, I think you can attest to that. Is that our classes are growing because these people had fun in class, and they're bringing their families, their friends. It's kind of almost a contest who can bring the most people. We have families coming now, 8, 10 people. That's a pretty good thing to have. So, and on the other side, I want to say that I am really fortunate, and so is my colleagues, that we come from an area that mainstream is the prevalent level. And not only the prevalent level, but it's strong mainstream. It's not weak. It's not everything is swing. What Daryl Condensed would say, swing through and spin the top, shut up, and find out what happens. If they do a right and left through and square through 3, you know where you're at that night. So the point is, they dance pretty good mainstream, and they dance all over, and they're going out, and they're traveling, and they're having fun. So I encourage you to take every lesson, make it a party, and if you don't come off that stage and shake hands and go out and meet those people, they won't know who you are. So it's more than just standing up there and holding the microphone. It's, you become their friend, their teacher, sometimes father confessor, but it's an interpersonal relationship that you have to form as a caller. And believe me, we went through the same pains as you guys talked about. The clubs, the association, oh God, we can't do that. That's just B51. Well, they're not saying that anymore because they see 2 things. They see the success of the B51 program that we're dancing. We actually have clubs that dance part of their dance as B51. And secondly, we collectively have taken the harness of using the B51 program innovatively. So it's not that standard everyday little vanilla thing. We hey, we do three-handed stars. Did you know you can do that? Yeah, you can. It's lots of fun. But it means one thing and one thing only for us. You got to work harder. You got to study. You don't get away with what we used to do 25 years ago when there was 70 squares on the floor. So that's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Okay, I'll walk it around, Gary. Oh, thanks. Make sure you state your name.
Stephen Nosek, Puyallup, Washington. How many years you been doing this program?
6.
Okay.
6 years.
6 years. Pick up your mic for me, please. Tell them what happened year one.
Year one, we had, what did we have? 4 or 5 dancers? Yeah, something like that.
So they faced adversity. They decided they were committed. That's a quality that you'd see on the leadership part of our
We have a lesson committee that consists of dancers from every club in the association. And I would be remiss if I did not mention this too. A good portion of our success, in my mind, much of our success is directly related to Glenn's wife, Nancy, who handles our advertising program. And, I mean, do you talk about somebody who's dedicated? God bless her. She keeps us good.
For the other callers in the room, what Nancy does is if somebody misses a lesson, they're notified immediately. Hey, we missed you. Sorry we missed you. We hope to see you next week. By the way, Don or Glenn will be there early. You can catch up. You're not going to fall behind. How many people within our own clubs, 4 weeks later, they go, hey, whatever happened to Glenn and Nancy? Well, they dropped out. We all have seen that.
So now my wife does, she's Nancy's counterpart. She does that. Every night we come home from a lesson, her first stop is at the computer. So she gets out, she mails out a list, she mails out what was taught. We use terminations. Sir. Oh, back there.
Okay, Mike Oliveri, Denver. You mentioned party atmosphere and camaraderie. We do a similar type of thing. We've got a club in northern Colorado that because people work 2 jobs and they have a hard time getting away, what we do is at 6 o'clock, we offer a quick bite to eat. So they can come directly from work to the class, have a quick bite to eat, socialize with all the club members, the caller, all those people. At 6:30 we start the lessons. We go from 6:30 to 9. Okay? And if they don't get there in time to eat, the food is still out during the first break that they can still grab a quick bite to eat during the break. And they start bringing people because it's like, hey, you don't have to worry about trying to grab something on the way there. Just come on from work over, and it's working great that way, too.
You know, I'd ask another question about that because I learned a valuable lesson here a while back, and that's one of the most successful clubs in Southern California is the Ramblin' Rogues. And I was doing a Labor Day weekend, and they were there in force. They're a big club. And I was told that what kind of club the Ramblin' Rogues are. And it turns out that they're a social club that just happens to square dance. I stole it, Charlie. I stole it. My club up in Sumner right now is advertising themselves as a social club that happens to square dance.
Right. Our big comment is...
And they do other things. They go out. The other night was a Mexican trained dominoes. They had 44 people over at the house doing Mexican trained dominoes.
We have a social event and a square dance broke out.
Yep. Yeah. Just like hockey.
You know, this is Charlie Robertson from Southern California. The Ramblin' Rogues are my club. And I will tell you one thing they do, how they recruit, is they have a couple of social events every month. And they invite people. They encourage their club members to invite people that aren't dancers to come to all of those social events. So when square dance class starts, they already know everybody. And we have between 11 and 15 squares every Thursday. So they're working it.
You got, right here.
John Doe, somewhere USA. Seriously, Dennis Clark, Indianapolis, Indiana, and the reason I said that is because this is being recorded and someone might hear my question. How did you get the callers to buy into this and possibly other clubs to buy into this?
Well, it started with Glenn Reixach and myself because we were the only 2 callers that were in this particular hall with this particular association. And between Glenn and myself and Nancy and the various clubs in our area, and I don't know about your area, square dancing was in the toilet. It was gone. If we didn't do something, I have a document up here that I co-authored with Glenn. It's called Change is Your Friend. If we didn't do something, there would be no more square dancing in Olympia. We had to fix it. It was broke. It was, a big dance with 2 squares. That's terrible. So we got together and said, we got to do something. And we had, actually, I want to give credit where credit is due. Part of this came with Jim Hatrick. Jim Hatrick had an 8-week program. I was not a fan. Be absolutely blunt about it. I wasn't a fan. But we got together with the association, Jim, Glenn, and myself, and a committee of dancers. And so we said, we're going to try it because we got to do something. And it wasn't that you got to teach everything from every formation in the world. It was pretty much we're going to teach everything vanilla. We're going to do it in 8 weeks. Well, we tried the first year, was it, Glenn? And we said, that's not long enough. We got to do it a little longer. Yeah, 6 starts. We modified it to 10 weeks, and we dropped it to 4 starts. And it started to pick up. And as I said, it's not uncommon for a couple or a single dancer or whoever to come through the program 3 and 4 times. Do you think they become pretty strong mainstream dancers by the end? You bet your bottom dollar they do. They're coming through multiple times. They're hearing other callers. So right now, involved in our program is Glenn, myself, Jim Hatrick, and thank you, California, we now have Carrie Masters. So we're working at it.
Did you continue to charge them each time that they came through, or did they come back through as angels?
They came back through as angels. What? Am I wrong?
You need a microphone back there.
No, I don't take the money, so.
We did. Every time they come through, they pay their $5 per person when they go through the 10-week program. But here's the difference. We trick them into that. We're actually teaching them, and the people that it takes, we're 30 weeks, 3 10-week sessions. We don't tell them that up front. They figure it out themselves. Well, I'm not quite ready to move on to mainstream. I need to go through B51 again. After the second one, I'm not quite ready. Or we tell them, if you don't know if you're ready or not, come talk to us. We'll tell you whether you're.
Yeah, I think what I was referring to, and I was thinking more on the lines of if they start your Monday class, they come to my Thursday class. They're not charged for that.
Right. We don't charge.
By the way, would you stand up, Nancy? This is the advertising genius behind it.
Got a question up here in front.
Now I forgot my question. Orrin Gaskill, Bellingham, Washington. You said you have a lessons committee in your association. You're talking about a council or your callers association?
The Olympia Area Square Dance Association, Inc.
So it's a sub.
We own a hall called Lakido.
I know.
One of the most beautiful square dance halls in the world. And I'm prejudiced a little
been there,
bit.
done that.
But each club has a member on the committee, as well as the board of governors or the board of the OSD Dance Association has a member on the committee. And we have a meeting usually in the summer to talk about our program, and Glenn and I will collaborate ahead of time and say, hey, we want to modify. We teach the same list, guys. So we've agreed to the list, and that's probably critical because you don't want to be teaching a different list than the other guys. So, and we're pretty strong about that. In some cases, it's actually written in the contract that you agree to teach the list. It's important. So we meet. The association initially wanted to give it a try. Now they're behind it 100%. And the clubs are behind it because clubs are growing now. They're not, faltering. So in the last 6 years, we've seen square dancing turn around in our area. I have talked and spoken on this subject from pillar to post, from East Coast to West Coast. And I encourage you, if you have any way you can get 2 callers together and you can find a common hall and 2 nights you can work, get together. Because it will happen. It takes time. You're not going to do it in the first time out. But 5-6 years down the road, the snowball's rolling.
Yeah, that's the whole key. He did. That's okay. It happens a lot at home. So anyhow, just kidding. What happens is that they're in a unique situation. I mean, I hope you guys are understanding this. This is not the silver bullet. Okay, I want you to really understand that. Our group that we have down in Southern Maryland is almost, it might as well be in Georgia because there's no crossovers, so we have control. Everybody in this room has to take control somehow. So we have some good information out of this whole process. Do we do it alone, or do we try to get a force built? Obviously, the more people you have that want to do it, the better success you're going to have. Some of us are trying to do it on our own because we can't get anybody else to buy in. But I'm telling you, once it takes off and it starts to grow, somebody is going to want to know how it's happening. They're going to see people. Like he said, started out with 4 people. Okay, now they're up to 60 people, 50 people, 70 people, whatever that case may be. I'm sure it alters. Okay, it can happen. But they've got a group of people that are working together. I'm in an area that doesn't work as easy as that way. So I got to take it upon myself to do it. You all in this room have to decide what you want. There's no silver bullet. These are ways that you can make it happen. But you have to be the ones who actually initiate it.
Barbie Ashwell with the National Executive Committee. My question is, how do your longtime mainstream dancers, clubs, etc., treat this new program? Are they on board?
The answer to that is yes. They are on board because they see the results. They know their club is growing. But as I said, you got to do your homework because you have to entertain both that new person in the hall and that experienced dancer that's been around forever, and they want to know why you're not doing spin the top from 78 different directions. You got to make sure that you're trying to cater to everybody, and it's a tough job. It's not something that you, for the faint of heart, you have to look at your choreography. I mean, the question I ask is, do you record yourself? Because if you don't, you're missing out. Compliments Mr. Lee Kopman. He records himself, and I think if it's good enough for Lee, I guess it's good enough for me. But the fact is, you'll hear, you'll see what you do wrote and over, and it gets you to change. The other thing I would like to address, a big part of this, and in my business, I think the biggest part, not the biggest, but a pretty significant part is music. If you're using the same old drudge square dance tunes that we used 50 years ago, you're not going to attract people. You better update your music. You better come with a fresh attitude because otherwise the activity that I love and my father loved will go away, and I just won't have that on my watch.
One of the things, in answer to that same question, is and how you teach is the key. I do a lot of two-couple teaching. All right? Well, so what it does, it adds something new, obviously, to the new dancer, no big deal. Anything and everything is new. But for those, for in my case, in the teaching council, and the club that we have down in Southern Maryland, that whole club buys into it, so that's a piece of cake there. They're already in. But with the other group, they're like, wow, we've never done this before. So by doing two couples, they get out there, they participate, they hook up with the couples that are, that are new. They make sure that, the couples that are struggling a little bit are with them. And so all of this camaraderie happens. And we're learning these calls on a two-couple basis. And then we get back into squares again.
Yeah, I'd like to add into that Sicilian circles.
Yes.
Because, you can teach a bazillion things from that circle or two-couple. We use that. Yeah. We employ that a lot as well.
Jerry Gilbert of Albuquerque, New Mexico. In your district up there, you're talking about recruitment. How do the other clubs, how many clubs are in your area, and how do they recruit from your lessons? Do they, and the second question is, you have families. We just graduated a big class in Albuquerque, and we have 3 families that brought their children, their kids. We charge the adults for the lessons. We give the kids free.
So, and again, I'm not the money guy, so I don't deal with how they handle it. Nancy probably can speak better to that than I can. The recruitment is, I guess, we encourage them, of course, the clubs not to recruit. I talked about a recruitment-free zone, and that's basically what we try to keep our Monday and Thursday lessons at. But you want to know what the best recruitment tool in the entire world is? Show up. The clubs that show up, the dancers that show up with their badge on and they're shaking hands, they're the first ones to get into a square. They're the ones that are, picking up a buddy, if you will, a buddy system. That's the clubs that grow.
I think from the we had some real issues with recruitment when we first started because we have 4 clubs that are participating in these lessons. But I think the thing that was important is we convinced the clubs don't recruit during class, but when we graduate those mainstream dancers, they each get a packet from every single club, which includes a free pass to the free dance. I don't care personally. I want them to walk in the door. I don't give a damn what badge they got on. And I think one other thing I want to add that we may have missed is Don and I share a club on first and third Saturday nights. His dance on the first Saturday night is mainstream. My dance on the third Saturday night is at the level that the class is, B51. So when we first start out, that third Saturday dance for the class, I may be calling 1 through 30. I've been calling for almost 40 years, and let me tell you what, I had to do some homework to do that, to make it fun for the regular mainstream dancers to not know that they were dancing 1 through 30. And that's not easy.
That's a good point, because if you bring your A game, the average dancer won't know. He won't even care. He or she won't even care, because your first and foremost job at that dance is to be an entertainer. And I've had people come up and say to me, it's been one of the B51 nights or what, and come up and say, "Geez, I've never done a 3-handed star before." Well, you have now. And I've stole everything I've ever done. I got that from Marshall Flippo, So, but the point is, you're an entertainer, and you're a teacher, and all mistakes that happen on the floor are mine. I own every one of them. There's no mistakes by the dancers, because I better do a better job of teaching if they're making mistakes.
Jeff Palmer, Colorado Springs. I was just curious, a little bit tag on to what she was saying, is how did you incorporate this into the existing dancing club program? In other words, you had a normal mainstream class, club, and maybe had every third tip plus something, normal, what I would call normal in our area. And so now you're going to incorporate this new system into there, or did you not incorporate it in there? Did you start something brand new?
No, we incorporated it in, I believe. We did, and I guess ostensibly, we tell them that, the first hour or whatever is going to be B51. But I can tell you from my perspective, on my first Saturday night there, or even on my fourth Fridays, I'll go along and I say, well, it's going to be B51 for the first hour, and I look out and I see that 60%, 70% of the floor is B51 dancers. So I go to my president and I said, look, I'm not changing the level at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. We're going to dance this. I'll take the onus, the responsibility to make the dance fun. And I don't think the dancers would care. And they don't. They just simply say, as long as we're having fun and we're meeting new people and these people are integrated into our program, we're happy with that. And clubs that are growing are happy.
Here's the deal. The honest part of this whole square dance world is. You have a room full of people. They don't really care if they're doing a particular dance program. All they care about are they being entertained, having a good time, and the energy in the room by more people takes care of an awful lot. So, but here, you folks are attending this, again, this is not a silver bullet. If you decide that you want your area to grow, they're in a situation special. They've got a special situation going on. Okay? You may not have that, but you may have to create that. That's the key. If you can find some people in your area that want to work with you, fine. If not, you may have to be the Lone Ranger. And the problems you're going to have is, well, if I do it this way, are they going to be able to be part of the rest of the world? Exactly what I tell the Wednesday people, guys, there's more out there, but until we are successful, they will not become a part of us. You cannot be a part of them right now. Eventually you will, but you got to just hang in there. So you really have to talk to them and tell them what the game plan is, in my view, okay? Personally. These guys have places they can go. A lot of places don't. Go ahead.
I think the other thing that's important to remember is those of you who've been calling for lots of years, like when Don and I were approached with this program, my response was, no way in hell. No way are we going to teach 51 moves in 8 weeks first and then 10 weeks. If you don't shift your paradigm and do something different because what you're doing now isn't working, you're dead. So in 5 years, do you want to keep not showing up and having 2 students or 3 students? You got to change. And what used to work for us when we had a huge pool of people to dance ain't working today, so you got to change. Somehow, do whatever you got to do. Something like we do, or come up with something brand new off the wall.
Yep. Gary, you have anything? You're going to talk about how we teach specific calls or just pass it?
It's totally up to what you guys want to do. We have a section here that's talking about techniques on how to teach some of the calls, which we really wanted to try and touch on. We'd like. Actually, that was the original process of this meeting, but it kind of changed and morphed into other things. So, Gary, I'll let you go ahead and start with that.
I'm going to try to talk about teaching in general first and then work it into one call. When I teach a call, I start teaching it 2-3 weeks ahead of time. I want those dancers to know all the material that I'm going to surround that call with so that I'm not teaching them a new call and, oh, here's some brand new choreography you've never seen at the same time. That takes the level of difficulty way up. So an example, I'm going to talk about teaching turn through. When I teach turn through 2 and 3 weeks ahead of time, I'm having the men star left and meet your partner, turn her by the right arm round. I will have do an alamandar, shoot the star, meet your partner, turn her by the right arm round. I'll do some things that involve an ocean wave where I do a swing through and something with that right-hand person from the centers and ends doing something together. Because eventually I'm going to teach calls that first are easy because they don't have a real hard ending position, but then I'm going to refine it some later, maybe that same tip, maybe a later tip, maybe another night, to where I'm going to teach something that needs more correct positioning. So I don't try to expose them to all this thing in one tip. I want to build them up with their choreography, and I may use more sophisticated choreography 2 and 3 nights after I teach the call so that they're being eased into it. And you know what? I don't have to stop the music then. It's just, oh, that was different. That was kind of neat. And they don't know they've learned something. So when I teach turn through, I eventually want them to get to be able to understand that they're back to back with somebody. So I use a little trick of taking 2 guys. So let me have 2 guys volunteer for me and stand up right here in the middle. I need 2, and I'm going to use these 2 guys because I don't want to put tape on the floor. So stay there. Jeff, why don't you come back here about 8 feet? And I don't care, face anywhere except me. and I need a lady to volunteer. Who's going to volunteer to help me? God, I never saw so many shy ladies. This is my demonstration model. Please give her a hand. So if you could stand over here and face me. I'm going to teach the dancers that this is an arm turn call that you've already been doing. And we're going to use an arm turn. And we're going to turn around until we're facing away from each other. This call is not over until we've dropped hands and gone on past each other. Notice we're back to back now, and I'm facing this spot that I've replaced instead of a piece of tape. She's facing the other spot. So I've done something with a demonstration here. Don't be afraid to get out and demonstrate. And I've showed real quickly the position, the geometry, so that they don't have to try to think about geometry like it was a math class. Thank you all very much for your help. Just a quick demonstration there. And so eventually, maybe not the night I teach turn through, but I'll eventually get to teach turn through, trade, buy, find the corner, Alaman left. But they're all things that I'm going to get out of like that to probably an Alaman left, maybe a right and a left grand, depending on the call. Quick, easy, little twists that are fun, things that make them laugh occasionally. I talk about the ladies as if they were goddesses so that all the men laugh at me for it. That's one call on how I teach that. We've written about it here so that you can see it.
I want to add to that. I spend a great deal of time. I know what my next lesson's going to be because we have it. I don't know how many people go in without a lesson plan, but that's lunacy. So I know what my next lesson series is going to be. And directionally, they probably had at least half of that the night of the lesson because I've done it directionally. So once I've got the directional part down, all I'm doing is going back and giving it a name now.
There you go. So does anybody have any questions about, teaching? There's also a teaching technique document that CALLERLAB has. So you can always go there. Like I said, all of this stuff that we're talking about is on that back table. So before you leave the room, please pick up these. Some of them are stapled together, maybe. Some of them may not. So, you might get a document. You pick up the first page, and there's two more that go with it or something like that because we have an awful lot of information for you. So take advantage of that. You automatically know that you can get it through the home office as well as a PDF file. So go ahead.
Lawrence Johnstone, Northern California. Touching on something that Gary just said. He said that he treats the ladies like goddesses and so that the men will laugh. Anytime you teach, if you can inject some sort of humor into it, no matter how silly, it really increases the retention. If you can use humor in your teaching, they will learn better and they'll have fun while they're doing it.
I want to add something to that because my wife coined a phrase, and that phrase I use diligently, and it's called pick-onables. You need to know who your pick-onables are. Not everybody enjoys having their name called out. So maybe my friend Gary over here is not a pick-onable. He don't want his name called out. So Bill's in another square, and I said, Bill, if you do it like this, we'd be better off. I'm talking to Gary because he's got to make a mistake, but I picked on Bill. You see what I mean? Yep. Know your pick-onables.
So I'm going to give you an example here. It's on there. Zoom is a really unique call, and I teach it as a two-couple. And what I do is for simplicity, I have them looking at the heads. I have the far couple, California twirl, and then I talk about it. How many people in the room ever were in a vehicle with a bunch of friends and you did Chinese fire drill? Have you ever done that before? That's how I teach the call. It doesn't take me long. They understand what I'm talking about. They remember that, hey, Chinese fire drill, I got to be facing the front end of the car. And, okay, so what happens is that if the front people come out and they get in the back seat people can move forward and all that, and it's great. So the first time I did this, I came up with the idea, and I thought, wow, this is great. And they're doing it very well. Then I put them in the squares. I could call double pass-through and Zoom and never have a problem. Now, how many folks can actually do that? It's questionable. Okay, it's a harder degree from there. But if I have a starting double pass-through, people can Zoom all day long. I ran into the problem where they were not sure what to do because all of a sudden they had people in the middle that they hadn't seen before. And so now it's a piece of cake to figure out what I need to tell them. You might see some people remember your leads and trailers and da-da-da-da. But it was kind of funny how that worked out, where they could actually do the most difficult of the Zooms perfectly. But the easier one, once you put them in the square. So it was kind of funny. It's a neat little way to do it. So that's a great idea for you if you'd like to use it. And all of this is kind of like on the paper as well.
And I have a favor to ask, just because I'm me and I want to ask a favor of you. Please, 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 while you're calling, don't say Center Zoom. Please. I'm asking. I'm sending the message. If you can get that out of your repertoire, please.
Do we have any questions? Oh, yes.
Orrin Gaskill, Bellingham, Washington. I have a couple philosophies in my teaching. One is, if you haven't learned, I haven't taught. And that's basic. And the other one is, I never embarrass somebody. When there's a mistake on the floor and I need to come down on the floor and demonstrate the correct way to do a movement, I say, we have a difference of opinion on how this is done. Let me show you what I'm seeing, and then I'll show you the right way to do it.
I'd like to add one more thing, if you don't mind. Anytime that you have a short process to teach, for example, in this case, the 12-week or the 10 or whatever that may be, 15-week, opposed to a 30-week or a 40-week, you have to find ways to get across how the movement is accomplished and how you teach it, and you can't spend a lot of time unless you allow yourself to come early and work with people or stay later or find that extra time, because as you can tell, you've got a lot to teach in a short period of time. So you have to work hard at finding out what is going to work well in order for you to get those things across. Okay?
I wanted to add a little bit about the pick-onables. You need to evaluate your own personality to be able to decide that. I have decided that I can come down as a very severe university professor without knowing it. So I don't pick on anyone because I can flip to a nasty old guy too easily. So I don't pick on people. I will say, let me demonstrate something because you have expressed a remarkable amount of creativity.
I left one thing out of our presentation, too, I want to tell you about, and that is, and I know that Glenn and Nancy will attest to this, is we have something else unique going on. They're getting younger. We are not catering to the octogenarians now. We have people in there from kids all the way through, but we do have people in the 40 and 50-something group, which was unusual. So we're getting better.
Do we have any more questions? Well, on that note, I'd like to give a nice applaud to Don and to Gary for a session well done. We thank all of you for coming and participating in this seminar. And at any one of us, at any time, if you, through the year or whatever, have more questions about things, please email us, contact us. We would always be available. Okay.
Love to talk about teaching techniques.
Yes, love teaching. So pick up your documents in the back, please. If we run out, don't worry. You can get them through the home office. I don't know the full details.
I do.
Okay.
As Bill said, or Bill or Gary, this is available on a flash drive for $5. It's not just this seminar. It's all the handouts that have been put out there. So somebody was asking about my digital music preparation. It's all on there. $5 is well worth it.
That's the cost of the thumb drive, basically.
Okay.
Please give a hand to Bill Harrison.
Oh,
yes. Thank you. And thank you all for attending.